Welcome, everyone, back to Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming Podcast. Today, we got Tara Grace. What a lovely name. I love that name, Tara
Thank
Grace.
you. Thank you.
Burn the stigma. How did we get together? Well, this is no coincidence here. We kind of track each other and we kind of follow each other and kind of we have the same like mind. And we connect with a lot of different people on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So I seen Tara on Facebook. I subscribed to her page and I asked her if she'd come on and she gracefully said yes. So here's Tara. I'm going to let Tara just tell you where you could find Tara. And Tara's going to tell us a little bit about her story, where it began then it went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and then from Alcoholics Anonymous, like myself, she was deprogramming from AA and then chose another advocacy with harm reduction. So go ahead, Tara, just start and tell us about that.
Okay, well, like you said, my name's Tara Grace. I go by Burn the Stigma on most social media platforms. My upbringing honestly was very normal. Mom, dad, grew up in a nice town. My mom was very much one of those helicopter moms, you call them. She was very involved. She was the PTA president of my elementary school. She was my brownie troop leader. She worked mother's hours. Like she was always there, right? And it's funny because this is how AA got me because because I always felt a little different, right? And that's how AA gets you because they always start with like, oh, you always felt different. Um, but like I always had friends that were really good at school or really good at sports, and I was just never really good at anything, you know? But when I started drinking and smoking weed in middle school, it was like finally something I was quote unquote good at, right? Like it was finally something that it became my identity. Like being a stoner and like a party girl, like that was finally something that, yeah, like that was my identity. I wasn't the scholar, I wasn't the sports champion or anything, but I like to have fun. And when I was a senior in high school, this was back in 2003, and OCs, Oxycontin, super popular during that time. And excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, and my mom, again, super strict, right? So I would get caught grounded because she would like give me a human breathalyzer. Every time I would come home, she would be standing at the door and she would pretend to be giving me a hug, but she'd really be smelling my breath, right? So I'm
Right.
constantly grounded all the time. The first night I came home after I sniffed my first OC, I was wrecked, but she did her human breathalyzer and there was nothing to smell. So I was like, oh man, this is perfect. This is perfect. And the other thing, surprisingly, that it helped me do was my homework. And it helped me become a better student because I have ADHD. So I was always like, I sucked at school too. And I was just able to do my work, and it like silenced everything and it made everything really good in my life. For the first time, I made honor roll. Like my parents were super proud of me, and I was like finally the kid that they really wanted. And I got into college, which was like, we didn't know if I was gonna make it to college. And drugs in the beginning were not bad. They really weren't a like in the beginning, they really did help me. It did cross a line. It did get to a point where my whole life became about the drugs and the OCs. And then, I progressed to the heroin. And then, I did become an IV user and just kind of went down that traditional path, right? And then when I was 20, I believe it was when I went into my first rehab, my first detox, all that stuff. And that is when my parents and myself really got tricked into believing that one path, that 12-step way, that's how it has to be. And man,
That's where
I mean, there's
the indoctrination starts in
yes,
the treatment
yes,
centers. Yeah, through the court
yes.
systems, in the treatment centers, through society. Everybody's saying you got this. You're an addict. You're an alcoholic. You're this, labeling us from society from the beginning. So yeah, so you
Yeah.
went in. So you were in detox, and boom, they get you there. So go ahead.
They got me. And then basically from my first time in detox, it was a 10 years, it was a decade of the cycle of detox, treatment, sober living, pick up again for however long, few weeks sometimes a couple months, then back to detox because I always thought that that's the way it had to go. I thought it had to be that way. I thought I was going to have to adopt, the 12-step way of life because I thought that was the way that you had to get sober. There was 18 months that I was sober, but I was in prison for that, and it was just again I just totally every resource, everything that I was ever involved in was 12 step, like anything that was ever offered to me, even if it wasn't directly the big book, it was all the same principles, the same dogma, the same rhetoric, the same stuff over and over and over again. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm never going to get this. I'm never going to get this. And I truly kept trying to fake it. I was like, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. I was sponsoring women, telling them all these things to do, thinking that, well, yeah, it doesn't work for me, but it's going to work for them, right? Because I'm the odd one. I'm the weirdo that it doesn't work for. There's something wrong with me. Then you get out of it and you realize statistically, majority of us don't find long-lasting recovery that way, but you're just in this echo chamber and it's all you ever hear and it's all you believe. And my family got sucked into it too. My family were so scared to let me home because they were told if you let her home, you're gonna kill her. Like they truly believed that I had to be in either treatment or sober living, that they could never let me back in the house. And it was just, again, just a never-ending cycle until one day I just gave up on recovery. I said, I'm never gonna be that 12 stepper as much as I fake it until I make it, all that stuff. I'm never gonna be that girl. Like
let
that's
me let
just
me
not
let me
me.
let me jump in right there.
Yeah.
I could the feelings of have to pick up a chip over and over again. You have to,
Oh,
you relapse. Okay, now you got the guilt, you got the shame, you got the fear, you got the stigma. Oh, if I do it a little better, what did you do? Oh, you didn't do step one properly. Oh, maybe it was two. Did I get a sponsor? Is my sponsor good enough? Am I going to enough big book meetings? Am I doing this? What type of service am I doing? Oh, always something's wrong with me. God
always.
forbid. And the feelings that you get from that over and over again, thinking that you lose time. Just pick up another trip, pick up
Yeah.
another trip. You lose time. There's no such thing. Time is an illusion. You can't lose time. You can't lose anything that you already had. All the
Right.
information and knowledge is already there and it stays in the body and in the mind and the soul. Continue
Right.
with that
Like you
feeling.
like you said though, like every single time you pick up again, like, you go all the way back to zero, right? And that's each time, right? Like when I was really thinking that the program was the way I had to do it, each time I come back, it's like, yeah, I'd gain another commitment. I would drive more people to meetings. I would do more things to try to get outside of myself. But the problem with that was that I was never learning how to fix myself. I was always getting outside of myself to help someone else. And yeah, it did help in the moment. But guess what? When I went to bed in my little twin bed at my sober house, I still had all those same thoughts and all those same problems and no coping skills to deal with them other than to pray and ask God to remove my character defects. Like what was that getting me? Nothing but the same cycle over and over and over again and just literally driving myself insane. And that's the thing. By the end, now the psych hospital stays are starting, right? Because now I am literally driving myself crazy, right? Before it was just the detox, the treatment, the sober living, but now towards the very end of it, now we're doing psych hospital stay before you know what I mean? Like I was literally driving myself insane and everyone else thought I was insane because they're like, why can't she get this? Like,
And
what
then
is wrong with her?
and the parents are so like, oh God,
Yes.
oh, just give her to someone, give her to the treatment center, give her to the rehab, give her to the sober living because I
Yep.
can't fix her.
Yeah.
Oh, if I can't fix her, somebody else can fix her, and they're not fixing nothing out there.
No.
Okay, it's just a little band-aid over something. They're not even. I mean, the dogma treatment. We have to go beyond this 12-step paradigm into a different whole realm of recovery, which you are part of. Burning the stigma is part of that. Continue, Tara. Continue. How
You
about this?
know,
Let's talk about some of the psych meds. You're in treatment, okay? So you're seeing a psychiatrist. or a psychologist, and they're trying different meds on you. How about take me through the different types of meds they're putting you through, and do some work, some don't. Then when you're trying to withdraw, the withdrawal symptoms mimic the drug itself or the symptoms itself, and they're putting you in a different drug. Did you go through that? Some of that?
So I went through a little bit of it, again, more towards the end, because most of the places that I went to in terms of treatment were very like anti psych meds, anti mental health help, right? Because it was like, well, of course you're depressed. You know, you're a drug addict. You're trying to get sober. Like everything was minimized, any sort of, actual thing. Well, of course, you think you have ADHD because you're coming off of heroin. Everything was always minimized. So yes, by the end, I was put on Zoloft. I was put on gabapentin, which I don't even know what that does for your psych, but and those were really the only two meds because again, my parents were terrified of me being on any medication because they've been fed in all those parent groups that, she put something in her body, she could have an abnormal reaction to it that makes her stick a needle in her arm. So even when I had, the psych, like my mom was a nervous wreck about the psych meds. So it really wasn't something that was a huge part of my life. It was just the emergency psych stays, right? And then it's like my mom would put me in these places a lot of times, like get me to go or like pressure me to go or be like, and like they would get there and they'd be like, the only real problem is that you have a drug addiction. I'm like, I know that, but my mom, she's convinced that I'm crazy and I am making myself crazy because I can't get this. Because, when you compare it, and I heard someone say this and I wish I remembered who, but when you compare it to like when you try to go on a diet, right? And you just have to you want to be on this perfect diet and you want to eat perfectly and do everything perfectly. Like when you do have that one little piece of cake, it doesn't ruin everything that you've accomplished in that, right? But yet with this, we're so like I was so there were so many times like I really wonder, would I have kept going if I didn't believe that that's what was going to happen? Like, could I have just had a slip one night and not kept going? But I figured, well, F it. I've already, it's going to happen anyways, so I might as well keep going. Or especially when you're in sober living, I'm going to be kicked out my next drug test anyways, so might as well go on my little run now.
Yeah, they
Everything
talk
is just
about
so all or
that
nothing.
that self-fulfilling prophecy. You know,
Yeah.
we've been brainwashed and indoctrinated into this system where, like smoking. You know, do I go around picking up chips for smoking? Do I count time smoking? Smoking cigarettes is a hard thing, and they swear, oh, if you pick up a cigarette, you'll smoke again. You'll start smoking everything. I always proved them wrong anyhow. I pick up a cigar, I start smoking cigars for a while. I quit for 2, 3 years. I pick up a cigarette, have one cigarette a day. Yeah, I didn't go back all the time. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it was told to me that, oh, if you ever picked up a cigarette or cigar, you're going to start smoking again forever, and you're going to be addicted to the cigarettes again. I think it's the same with a lot of different other types of use. Now, right now, let me ask you this. Right now, what do you maintain with? Do you use anything right now? You consider yourself like an alcohol-free lifestyle today, but you still use some.
Yeah, so I don't drink. It's not by like I would drink if the right occasion came about, I would have another drink. Um in terms of like I do use cannabis pretty much on a daily basis. I don't actually like identify as in recovery anymore. I feel like, I did have a huge part of my chunk of my life that was, a substance use I did have a substance use disorder. I feel like I have healed, moved on from that. I don't have a chaotic relationship with substances anymore. I don't use any opiates or anything, obviously. But yeah, I do use cannabis, but I don't label it anything. I don't like I used to. I used to feel like I had to, right? Like I used to feel like I couldn't just be like, oh, like I like to smoke weed. Like now I say that, but that's just more recent. I used to feel like I was like, oh yeah, cannabis is part of my recovery, blah blah blah. But I'm like, really what recover, like what does that even mean
Why
to
do
me
you
at
even
this
have to
point?
say, yeah, why
Right,
do you have to
right,
justify that or say that to anybody?
right,
It's like I eat donuts a lot. Okay, do I go around telling people I eat donuts just because you live a fat-free diet? I don't have to go around saying, oh, poor me, look, beat myself on the head because I'm doing something. Uh, so yeah, so maintenance, I'm seeing a lot of. Okay, so how about if I use the word, how about if I said you recovered from heroin addiction?
yeah,
That's done.
yeah,
Why would you say I'm in recovery from that? No. Okay,
right,
so you recovered from heroin addiction. You
mm-hmm,
recovered from opiate addiction. Okay,
mm-hmm,
but I look at it like I'm going to be recovering from something maybe different. Could be it could be from my donuts. Okay,
yeah,
it could
yeah,
be from smoking. But once I kind of stop and enjoy and live that type of lifestyle, I'm not in recovery from that.
right,
There's no such thing. Me personally, this is just for me. I enjoy. I've done it for many years, and I just choose it. It's a choice. I think everything is a choice, no
mm-hmm,
matter what. I choose an alcohol and drug-free lifestyle. That's me.
yeah,
That's me. Do I think using giving up alcohol or giving up heroin and using maintenance cannabis as a good thing? I think it's a very good thing. Okay, I think it's definitely harm reduction. There's no question
yeah,
about it. You're doing a less harm to your body, and maybe you're not doing any harm to your body. Okay, because you're not abusing it.
right,
Okay, because it's a much more healthier recreational thing to do. That's
yeah.
good. So continue with that. Where are you at now? Let's go into the. Where do you want to go from here? You want to go into the advocacy, the harm?
Sure, yeah, I will, yeah,
Or do you?
so when I first started sharing my journey online, right, I came on as very like a still thinking that I was in the minority with my um AA and 12-step experience because that was one thing when I was in treatment. I went to like DA, CA, HA. So with those, they still use the big book, right? Like they're still, so I was still very much like the AA text, the first 164, like that was everything of my life. But anyways, what was I just talking about?
Let you kind of were trending where you were
Oh,
all.
oh, I remember.
Go ahead. Good.
I
Good. Good.
remember. I remember. So when I first started coming online, right, I thought that other people would have similar experiences, but again, still had no idea that this was like an overwhelming majority of people don't find success in the program. Then I started to, you start to connect algorithms, people start to pop up. I saw, a couple of your videos. I saw a couple Quackaholics Anonymous, like, I saw a few things come up and I was like, okay, this is, then I started to read some books. I read like Undoing Drugs. I read Coming to Harm Reduction, Kicking and Scream, like Unbroken Brain, just a bunch of different, and I was like, you know what I mean? I was like, I can't believe that this, like what the facts are compared to what I thought the facts are. And it just opened up a whole, now I was like, now I'm like, okay, now I'm not afraid to say what I want to say because the truth is on my side. The facts are on my side. This isn't, I'm just not some girl who's saying like, 12-step can be harmful. Like there's a lot of evidence to show that 12-step can be harmful. There's a lot of evidence to show that it has completely hindered us from advancing in the treatment world when it comes to substance use disorder. And that's kind of what's just propelled me forward is having the truth on my side and knowing the facts from what, I've been indoctrinated for forever. You know, it's
Exactly. No, that's beautiful. That's exactly what happened. My podcast, what I'm about is I help prepare. I think you mentioned it on one of your shorts. I help prepare. We help, not I, but we help prepare people why they're in these 12-step modalities to feel comfortable when they get some more information. So the same as you did on the outside, getting all this information, I was doing it inside because I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for probably much longer than you were. Probably I was in 30 years,
wow,
but I
yeah.
so I I was It's called cognitive dissonance. Okay, it's called ambivalence. I was like, I thought I was right, and then they tell me I was wrong. I felt I was doing something different. I think I could do this, but they tell me, no, you can't do this, you know. So my experience was always trying to prove them wrong in a sense, but I always had a desire to what I wanted. It didn't come from out, it came from me. I found
Right.
out that we create our own programs. Okay. It's all coming from me no matter what. So like your experience, your I call it observational experience, is proof enough for me and other people, even without statistics, because
Right.
statistics can be skewed in any type of
Yeah.
program, modality, method, or whatever. It can be skewed to make it sound and be better than it really is. But I go by my I consider us to be investigative researchers. Okay, people think that they need these big companies. We're investigative researchers, and through observational experience, through time and our life journey, we discover it's true what we find. But all those other things that help us to validate
Right.
our beliefs give us that validation saying I'm not alone. So I can relate to that. So I'm trying to help people. I don't like putting down people because I was part of it. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for many years. I was programmed. I like to help people deprogram slowly. And when they do exit, then they could, while they're in, they could check out Burn the Stigma, uh, Saxton Space, Unconquered Healing, Deprogramming with Monica Richardson, or any of those other things. And that's what we're doing. We're allowing other people to get these resources from different types of podcasts. Continue, continue.
Well, just thinking about like what you were saying about how when you're in the program and it was like when I would have these thoughts about, I don't know, like this, is this really like how I'm gonna have to live my life? Like, is this really my only option? But then it's like, oh, that's my disease talking to me. Oh, like I can't trust my own thinking. See, like my own thinking's trying to take me out. And I as somebody in my especially like when I was in my early 20s, like, getting programmed to this stuff. And I think that, unfortunately the treatment industry, especially for young people, like it just kind of sinks its claws into a lot of people. And while I do firmly believe that 100%, I had an actual real,
Yeah.
problem with
Oh, yeah.
heroin. I do believe the treatment industry, manipulates parents, and some kids even are, young, especially younger kids. Like I would see people, like 16, 17, being told they're an alcoholic and an addict and they're gonna have to live like this like, what do you mean? You don't know that at 16, 17 years old, like, and the thing is when they teach you all the, you learn about these character defects, and then you're told, you're selfish and all of these things like that. This is such an impressionable time, right? So now in this impressionable time, like we're learning to not trust our own thinking. That is so dangerous. That is so dangerous. And now you're relying on, like, I remember thinking that I had to like run any sort of decision by at least like three women in the program. Like just crazy stuff that like even at 39 years old now, being as far away from the program as I am now, like I really think that that messed up my self-confidence and my self-esteem. Like this is something that I'm really trying to recover from, because again, you just learn that, like, I really believe that I was just a selfish piece of crap, like that I was just, there was nothing good about me, that I just had to devote my life for others. And that is what the program taught me. And that is why this is so important to me, like speaking about it for those people that are still attending, knowing it's not working for them, but thinking they have no other choice. It's either I do this or I'm gonna die, right? And it's those people that do end up picking up. And with the drug supply of today, there is no bouncing back from that. The drug supply today is nothing like what I even dealt with. So it's super important for me for people to just, and sometimes I do get a little disrespectful, I think, especially when people leave like nasty comments, 12 steppers can get a little rowdy in the comment section, I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah,
Um, and you do kind of have to take a step back and remember, they're a victim to the brainwashing too, you
exactly.
know?
Exactly. That's the way I feel. That's the way I kind of feel um, about, it's a cult mentality. It's a look, take a chip for the rest of your life. If you don't, you're going to go to jail, institutions, or die. It's a lifelong thing. I call it a lifelong servitude of slavery
Yeah.
because it's actually you become a slave, and the indoctrination is very deep. It's cult mentality, and it gets you. Now, I'm going to be doing a podcast. There's certain levels of joining too. There's people that only go to one meeting a week or, one meeting a month, and they do other things, and they're actually creating their own program on the outside, but they go in there, they give credit to Alcoholics Anonymous. And then there's the type like myself that was cognitive dissonance, and I didn't believe everything. And I did everything, but didn't even buy it, and learned more things and found out how it wasn't true. And then there's people that are big book thumpers, blah, blah, blah. I think there's a couple of different layers of it, but the indoctrination goes deep, and it happened years and years ago. And you know, I believe what I believe is Rockefeller took over Alcoholics Anonymous when it first
Yeah.
started and created it, designed it for a purpose, certainly. But it becomes a cage. It's a prison. It becomes a
Hmm.
lifelong prison of servitude, constant recruiting. It's like the Moonies almost because it's a secret society, and you're always constantly you have to have recruit. You got to recruit. You have to have you have to have a sponsor, and your sponsor has two sponsors, and you have to sponsor three people, and they sponsor three people. It's kind of like a multi-level marketing type
Hmm.
of a cult. But yeah, let's talk about some of the advocate the harm reduction stuff that you do over there in Massachusetts.
Sure. So, one of the things that, I have seen is well, kind of what got me into it was just realizing that there's so many people that just have such a warped and misinformed perception about everything. And from speaking online, I'm like, how are we really going to make a change? Like, what can I really do? And like, luckily in Massachusetts, of course, you always need more, but there when it comes to harm reduction, I'd say as far as a lot of other states, we're pretty good. A lot of our state resources are they could always be better. But I think that we're ahead, right? But I'm trying to like brainstorm like where is the big disconnect? Like how are we going to bridge this gap between, because it really does feel like it's like harm reduction versus abstinence, just abstinence recovery, right? Not even just 12 step. I think just there's people who are wholeheartedly just believe abstinence is the only way to do recovery, whether that's with 12 step or not. And like, how do we kind of bridge this gap? And I think it's having these one-on-one conversations with people and like, where do I'm just like always trying to brainstorm. And luckily I do smoke my weed. So
Yeah.
one thing that I started to get connected with was cannabis events and at dispensaries, right? Because there's a lot of people who, they smoke cannabis, but they also do other things. And so I just set up a little table, hand out Narcan, test strips, information about resources around. I've been trying to get into restaurants like bars. It's been very hard. I think a lot of bars think if you show up there to hand out Narcan that you are almost like saying that there's drugs going on at their place or something. It seems like they just really don't want it, but I keep trying. But yeah, and then I say a lot of stuff, I try to get involved. I did go to a few recovery events over the summer, and that was very interesting. That was very interesting. I was the only harm reduction
Go get
table.
this. I'm gonna get this here.
Okay. I don't know if you wanted me to stop. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. You gotta have it.
Now, let me ask you something about that. I'm sure you get people. Well, this is Narcan. It has two doses in here, and what is it? Naloxone? How do you
Yeah,
say it?
naloxone, naloxone.
Naloxone. Now,
Hmm.
Suboxone is the combination of bu, bu,
It's like buprenorphine and
yeah,
naltrexone, I
yeah,
believe.
right. Together, that's the Suboxone. That's the
Yeah,
Suboxone, and
yeah,
that's more or less. It's like a methadone if you were using heroin. It's giving it's given to you to lessen the harm as far as if you're a heroin addict or not say addict, heroin user that's problematic. Now, we're not here to deny that addiction isn't real.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
there's addiction, like I think you talked about. There's a spectrum of really problem,
Yes.
bad, severe. It's methamphetamine and cocaine use and heroin use is terrible. When I was young, one of my best friends was used heroin when I was in her 20s, and he passed away early. He was in his 20s. But it's terrible. It's bad, but there is in between. There's not so bad. Like myself, maybe it's not so bad. There's stuff in between, and then there's people that just use recreational. They just go to the bar and have a drink. Like my wife, she'll drink a drink once a week or whatever, and never have a problem in it. If it's creating it, I look at it this way: everybody has autonomy, freedom to do whatever you want. You're
Hmm.
free to do whatever you want. But when it comes to autonomy and it comes to drug and alcohol use or even process addiction, if you're affecting other people, it goes beyond autonomy. If you're
Right.
really doing harm to other human beings, you know, then it's our problem too. Okay, so we have to talk about that in a sense when we're talking about all these other addictions, because process addiction. How about you have a gambling addiction?
Hmm.
Social media is bad. The new thing is with the vaping is going to be, that's going to be a big thing too. To ease off it. Harm reduction. Do less.
Hmm.
Less is better. Okay.
Right.
I don't care what it is. You got the porn, you got the sex, you got the gambling, you got the
Yeah.
food, all kinds of different types of addictions. So when we talk about addictions, we understand that it's a big problem, but it's not generalized. It's not black and white.
Right.
There's
Right.
all
You
kinds of
have to embrace the gray. There's a huge gray area that we miss so many people because we have everything like it's either all the way this way or all the way that way. And like 100% when I was an IV heroin user, I was absolutely at like there was a time that I was on the pretty bad end of the spectrum. I was living in my car. Like I said, I committed crimes that put me in prison over it. Like it was pretty bad. It got pretty bad. But then I was able to heal from that. And, now I have a very not chaotic relationship with cannabis, and I think that if like I feel like if I had to be 100% abstinent, and maybe people would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe she's saying that." But I truly believe I don't know if I would be here right now, because I do need that little release. Like I do, like it really for my mental health. And like I used to be so scared to say this stuff, like I used to just try to keep it so like, yeah, like, it's part of my recovery, like it helps me, blah, 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 blah. And like, maybe it is still part of my recovery if I'm saying in a sense it does, because it does help me, right? Um, but like, we're so used to thinking of being high or stoned or, not sober as a bad thing. And like for some people, absolutely, there are some people that cannot and should not do that, right? But I also feel like there's a whole lot of people that probably should, but they don't, they end up dead because they're trying to, maintain this perfect abstinence that just isn't ideal. It's just not ideal for everybody. And I know that probably sounds crazy to some people in recovery. Like maybe they're gonna be like, "Oh, you sound like you're in denial, honey. You sound sick," or what have you. But it's real, you know?
Yeah, you know what? People don't need to justify to other people why or how. I know for a fact that it relieves. I have, this stuff is close to me. It's very close to me. So I understand all about that. Just because I choose not to do it, that doesn't mean anything. Right now,
Hmm.
because we only have, this time thing with these chips and all that. The power now. Do you ever hear Eckhart Tolle? Eckhart Tolle talks about the power now. All we have is the now. There's
Hmm.
nothing else that exists. We have the past. We can
True.
think about the past. We can think we can project into the future. But when we're projecting into the future, we're doing it now. When we think about the past, we're doing it at this moment. Me and you are
True.
talking about this moment right now. So right now, who knows what I do next week? I
Right.
may I may want to enjoy some cannabis next week. Okay, so what? Who knows?
Right.
So I may want to enjoy something else, but right now, me personally, I do not participate. But you and millions of others that do, I I embrace that, and people don't have to justify it because they can do it. They can do it. They
Right.
enjoy it. It helps them. There's no question you're doing it. You're doing less harm to yourself,
Yeah.
and you're enjoying something.
Right.
You're doing it recreation.
Right.
It's not harming anybody else.
No.
It's your autonomy. That's you have a right, and we have a right. I have a right to continue that autonomy. Let's see where we're at. We're at 3 minutes left. I want you to close with something. Anything you want to close with next 3 minutes.
Hmm. I guess I just, if you're someone who's watching this and you're in the rooms right now and you're kind of like, I don't know, like, you're just having kind of your doubts, right? The good thing is that it's your choice, right? Like if you want to stay, if you like it, stay, and if you want to try something else, like just have the confidence in yourself to know that you can make the right decision for yourself, right? Like I know when we're in those rooms, we're convinced that we literally can't trust the own thoughts in our brain. But realistically, if you are trying to leave because you want to get high, or you're trying to leave because, you think it's just not for you, and it's not for a lot of people, and that's okay.
Right.
Like everyone has their own path. Like there is as many recovery paths, even if a whole bunch of people go to AA or go to this place, it's still an individual path. Everyone still has their own path, and you have your life, and we only have one. And please don't spend your life in a church basement if you don't want to be there,
That's
because there is
exactly
so
right.
much more out there. There's a whole wide world out there waiting for you.
That's exactly right, Tara. Thank you so much for being with us today on Anonymous Addiction Deprogramming Podcast. Everyone, please subscribe. Help me, help us get the word out. I think if we get to 1,000, I could do some lives and we can have Tara back on. We'll talk more about uh, harm reduction, a little bit more about that because I have a lot more questions to ask. And you know, we have so much in common. We got 1 minute and 13 seconds. I got a little timer. I got a little timer up there. They give you 45 minutes uh, when this Zoom meeting. But thanks, Tara.
Thank you so much
Uh,
for having me.
I'm going to take it out. I'm going to press this button. Take care, everybody. See you on the next
Bye.
podcast. Thank you, Tara. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.